How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Welcome back. How was the event Saturday?
Thank you so much for having me back. It was wonderful. We had a great turnout of kids. The Chaffee Farmers and Artisan Market is always so fun. And just to see all those kids get creative with fort building as a way to honor, being here in Fort Chaffee and the history of, part of our history here. It was really neat to see. A lot of the kids just blew me away with their creativity. I couldn't have come up with a lot of the things that the kids came up with. So
I had no idea that it was centered around the area, like the fort build. I just thought they were building forts for fun, but so you're telling me it was like intentionally tied in with the location.
Yes. So Kathy Watson wrote a book called My City is a Fort. And it's really just a nod to the history that we have here. And it was actually the inspiration behind our name, Fort Kids, and also our logo for Fort Kids Children's Museum. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And tell me the name of this book one more time, just so I can make sure.
It's called My City is a Fort.
Okay.
Wow. Yes.
Okay, so then if that was the inspiration, let's go all the way back to the beginning.
Yes.
When did this idea of Fort Kids come about?
So the idea of Fort Kids came about in 2021. So I had my son in 2019. He turned 1 March 15th of 2020, right when everything was changing with our world with COVID. And I found out that I was pregnant with my daughter 2 weeks later on March 21st. And so I was really at home with Ethan, and he was a busy toddler. And I kind of went through a period of isolation, of not really getting out very much and not really seeing my friends as much. And we had a support system through our family, but there's nothing like that connection that you get whenever you're hanging out with your kiddo and other moms and or other parents, other adults. So I really kind of went through a hard time. And I feel like through kind of like answered prayers, this idea of Fort Kids landed on my heart. And I'm also a counselor. And so getting to talk to kids and kind of hearing their stories. And also whenever I talk to kids, I play with them. Like I'm not asking them questions. I'm playing with them as a way to engage with them. And then they start talking to me. And so it was really just this idea of needing more resources and amenities here in our community.
That's really cool. And so I'm guessing, based off of you saying that you kind of had a difficult time during COVID because everyone was isolated. I'm guessing you're an extrovert.
Well, I'm actually more of an introvert, but since becoming a mom, I feel like connection is so important. I mean, we know Brené Brown says this, but as human beings, we're hardwired for connection. Like we need it the most in our lives. Connection is what it's really what we all thrive on. And so it wasn't so much that it was like I wanted to like get out a bunch. It was just that missing connection piece. And I thought to myself, this is something that I know that my kids need. This is something that I know I need. So I'm guessing other people need it too.
Yes. That's a really good way to put it. I never really thought about people being, everyone needing other people in that sense when it comes to introverted / extroverted.
Yeah.
And I think it is very, very true.
Yeah.
But I also think too with COVID and everything, a lot of people who maybe even were introverted are now living out their extroverted lives nowadays because they were so isolated for so long. Yes. And I think too, unfortunately, when it comes to communities, kind of like Fort Smith or even bigger cities as well, COVID really left behind a mindset of isolation that we have now adopted as a new normal, which is so unhealthy. Even for me nowadays, I go throughout my work life and I could go all day without seeing anybody. I could be in here working, doing my craft. And the only people I see that day is my wife and my son. Yeah. And I don't really feel that great when I get home.
Yeah.
And I think that that's not good. And I think COVID, with us having to do social distancing and things like that, kind of built that and ingrained that and made that more of a now lifestyle for people, which I don't think is healthy. Yeah. And so you basically were in that. And then how did you get out of that? What was the first step out of that?
Well, I mean, honestly, a lot of prayer. Like and also counseling. I mean, I reached out and, needed that support for myself.
What?
And
Are you telling me that counselors go to counseling?
absolutely, counselors go to counseling. I am a counselor because of counseling and the way it touched my life.
Yes.
Yes. My dad is actually in recovery. And so I'm a full believer in counseling and that everyone could use a safe place to turn to because we all go through things. And I think that's, another part of Fort Kids. I often say it's like we know as adults that we can't protect kids from everything that they're going to experience in life. They're all going to have challenges and adversity. They're all going to come up against resistance. They're all going to experience loss and grief. They're all going to experience rejection at some point in their lives. The more that we can build connection for kiddos to themselves from an early age, the more resilient they're going to be in their life. And so for kids, it's this idea that we build, connection through each other, but we also build it through, through our experiences that we have. And so the more that we can have, experiences that connect us with ourselves, the more resiliency we'll have because we know ourselves better, and the more we know ourselves, the less likely we are to lose ourselves in the midst of, the adversity that we may come across, whether it's rejection or, So.
When did counseling come into your life as far as you being a counselor? How did that come about?
Well, so it's interesting. I've been in counseling since I was in my mid-20s. And so my dad went into recovery whenever I was 25 or 6. And I wasn't living here at the time. I was living in Texas. But I'm from Fort Smith. And I knew that I wanted to come back to Arkansas, to build that relationship with my dad. And so I did. And at the time I had also become a yoga teacher. And so I opened up a yoga studio in Fayetteville. And anyway, so then a roundabout way, I met my husband and he was living here in Fort Smith. And I decided that I wanted to go back to school and get my master's in counseling so I could hold more space for people, to develop, that awareness within themselves and also have space to process their emotions. And that's kind of what I was doing as a yoga teacher, but I wanted to be able to do it in a different way and to hold more space for people. So I went back and I got my master's in counseling from John Brown University.
Oh, yeah.
And then I graduated and I had Ethan, my son, right whenever I was graduating and beginning to take my boards. So it was kind of all connected.
Wow. Did you go to the last event they just had there?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. They had a big event at the school recently and it went viral on TikTok.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
It was bad.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'll have to show you after. But where were you located in Texas when you were there?
So I was in Houston at the time. So I went to college in Colorado, in Denver, and then I moved to New York, and then I moved to Texas, and then I just found my way home.
You've been everywhere.
So I've gotten to have a lot of experiences, and I'm really grateful because it actually made me thankful for Arkansas,
yes.
And because this is such a wonderful place, and I'm so grateful I grew up here, and now I'm so grateful to be raising my family here.
Yes.
So
I'm very curious about the move from Fayetteville to Fort Smith.
Yes.
Because most people go from here to there.
Yes.
So what made you come from there? What were some of the deciding factors that made you come from Fayetteville to Fort Smith?
Well, the cost of living is nice here.
Okay.
My husband has a job here that he loves. And also, I knew that, Fayetteville was growing, and it was growing at a rapid pace, which is awesome. But at the same time, like I really had this pull to want to come back to Fort Smith and like dig into the community that really raised me and pour back into it. And I didn't know what that looked like. And I truly had no idea that I would be doing a children's museum. Like if you would have told me that, even like 4 years ago, I would have been like, what? Mm-hmm. No, that's not even in my scope of within my reach of my abilities, because I've kind of been learning how to do this as I go. But I really had no idea. But it all makes sense to me now. Mm-hmm. I think that God has bigger plans for us than we realize. And
yes,
so.
Can you paint a picture for me of exactly when Fort Kids came into your mind? So I'm thinking like, hey, I was at a coffee shop and I saw this, or I had this experience and this happened.
Yeah. I was actually changing my daughter. She was 3 months old. And, I was also like wrangling Ethan, and Ethan was probably like 22 months old. So I'm just like wrangling both, and poop and pee, and like, man, I wish I had somewhere to take them.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And my son at the time, the only thing that he would watch was Blippi. I don't know if you parents out there are aware of Blippi.
Yes, definitely know who that is.
But that's the only thing that he would watch. And Blippi would go to children's museums. And I was like, goodness gracious, this place looks awesome. Like, it looks like a wonderful place where, kids will be, busy, but they're also going to be learning and developing skills.
You saying at a museum that you went to?
No, I was watching Blippi in the museum. And Ethan was watching it too. And so I put out on Facebook just a post that was like, does anyone else think that there needs to be a children's museum in Fort Smith, Arkansas?
Okay.
And I had all these responses. And so out of the responses, I messaged everyone and was like, hey, let's talk about this. And so there was a group of us that started talking about it. And then we decided to have our first meeting. And my friend Ashley Buckley, she's an attorney here in town.
Okay.
Poor sweet Ashley. I was like, hey, this is actually, so that planted, I did the Facebook post, we talked about it, but then it wasn't until a year later that I was like, hey, Ashley, let's do a 501c3 and do Fort Kids. And that's really what started the whole thing. And then we had our first meeting just out of the people that responded from that Facebook post.
Wow. That's so cool.
Very random.
So it's inspired by Blippi.
Inspired by Blippi. I even wrote Blippi an email and was like, hey, just so you know, you inspired this children's museum.
That's so cool. So YouTube TV, because he's mainly on YouTube, or is it on Disney Plus now?
I think he's on Prime.
Okay.
But at the time, he didn't have any of that.
Yes. Okay.
So,
have you heard of Miss Rachel?
Oh, yeah. We love Miss Rachel.
Okay. We're a big Miss Rachel household.
Miss Rachel's great.
And what's cool about that as well, and it's hard to get people in Arkansas to think this way, but doing things like what you're doing is incredible. And a lot of people need this and want this. But when it comes to like the business structure and talking about bringing in a little bit more revenue to help these dreams come true, people don't really think about the impact on online media, just taking a camera and recording what you're already doing, how much revenue that can bring in. Yeah. So for instance, Miss Rachel, have you seen like a kids pastor before? They're basically Miss Rachel's in person, the same energy, the same like connection level they're trying to come to with the kids. They're doing different sign language movements whenever they're talking. And I'm like, or we go to a library and they do like library classes. I'm like, you should really consider taking that style of content, exactly what you're doing, and creating a channel. And it's not really copying, right? Because more people are going to watch that person because it's from a different place and people are interested in that person or that business and what they're doing. So I think doing things like that is super duper cool. And I guess coming back around talking about the revenue and different things that you can do to build a business, what has been kind of your driving source of income trying to do all of this? And I know you're still in the fundraising process and things, but What does the business structure look like?
So we are a 501c3. So we laid the foundation for that. We have like 15 really hardworking board members. And we have been actively, so since last year in August, Mayor McGill very sweetly donated $15,000 to us. And since then, we've kind of kicked off the capital campaign, and we're just starting to reach out to businesses. Because within Fort Kids, we're going to have a playful town. So it's going to have a bank. It's going to have an auto body shop, kind of a garage space. We're going to have a construction area. We're going to have a food truck. We're going to have a medical office. We're going to have, like a really fun, it's actually going to be like an airplane, like simulator, but it's going to be a town that these kids get to experience and hopefully develop, those life skills and build those life skills. And so what we're hoping for is that businesses want to be a part of this playful town. So like, for instance, First National Bank, they gave us a donation to have the bank within Fort Kids.
Okay.
So it's going to be First National Bank within Fort Kids. And we really feel like one of the great things about this is really weaving in our community into Fort Kids, and shining the light on the things that Fort Smith does have. And the really great ways that our community kind of continues to pour into Fort Smith to make it a better place.
Yes.
And so we're going to have that area. We're also going to have an art studio. We're going to have a STEM area, like a tinker space. And this space is going to have more open-ended play. So like kiddos can build their own race cars and race them down tracks. We're going to have like a really large ball fall wall and some things that really teach those science, technology, engineering, and mathematics skills to
I've never heard of
kiddos.
this wall you said.
Yeah, ball fall wall.
What is that?
So it's you can manipulate how a ball will fall down a wall with pipes. And so it's kind of like a large marble run, if you can think of it like that. But the kids get to decide, sorry, I'm pressing into the microphone. Kids get to decide where they put their chutes so that the ball can roll down and they can see where it ends up and where it goes.
And you can almost do like a race with, you can drop two at one time. Okay, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're also going to have like a big 2-story climber.
Wow.
We're going to have a water play area that's going to really speak to the history of the Arkansas River. So whenever I'm talking about all of these things, we're really hoping that donors, want to get involved and want to help us build this so that it is a reflection of our community. And it is a reflection of, what we have here. So
what's the age range because with all these things, I was thinking, littles and like younger, but it sounds like this is going to be a really broad age range that can come in.
We are trying to target ages 0 to 13.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Just so, because people might have different age kiddos. They might have a really little one. They might have a 9-year-old with them, or they might come with, several family members or several different families, and all families look different. So we really want to try to encompass the whole family and engage the whole family.
That's really cool. I want to rewind back just a little bit. So whenever you said you put out the message on Facebook and you got some engagement, you tested the waters and you saw that people were interested, it sounded like you already had decided what type of business structure you're going to choose with the type of entity it was. Why was that you chose specifically that one? So
children's museums are typically nonprofits. Museums in general are most often 501c3. So like whenever we applied, like you basically, check mark children's museum and it's already listed typically as a tax exempt entity. So that's kind of how we decided. It's actually in Fayetteville now, there's a Play Street Museum, and they're a for-profit model. which is wonderful. But we really just wanted to go this route because we also knew that there was more potential to serve this way. So
yeah. And I'm sure that makes it way easier to raise funds as well, because there are a lot of businesses and banks and everything that wants to be attached to a nonprofit for multiple different reasons.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why most museums actually would be nonprofits. Yes. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So with the climbing wall, have you found a sponsor yet for that one, or a person to play with?
We haven't yet. Yeah, I'm curious because I actually had a meeting this morning with our architects and then our exhibit designer, and it's going to be really cool. And we're hoping that this climber can go. It's going to be inside Fort Kids, but then it's going to be outside as well. So it's going to have an indoor, outdoor, outdoor viewing of kind of like a little nest area where kids can walk out enclosed, but outside, inside.
Yes.
So we don't have a sponsor for that area yet, but we're hopeful that, once people can start really seeing the plans for it and visualizing everything, that people will be like, oh, that's cool. I want to give to that because I want my kids to be able to do that. So
the reason why I ask is because I know there's I know that there's at least one in town, and I don't know, maybe worth looking into with them.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
So all the places you've traveled, you've been to New York, Texas, Northwest Arkansas, anywhere else?
I went to school in Colorado.
In Colorado.
Yeah.
Do you feel like all of those places you kind of had an idea, and you extracted some of those elements from those places and you're putting them into this project?
Well, I guess I feel like maybe all those places just led me here and led me to do this, because like I said, I would have never guessed that I would be living back in my hometown trying to do a children's museum. If you had told me that, I would have been like, you are crazy. But I can definitely see, I went to New York because I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to actually try to reach young girls in terms of I interned for 17 magazine, and I wanted to reach them in terms of knowing their self-esteem and knowing their self-worth. And so now it's I get to help kiddos build this, but through in a different way. Hopefully Fort Kids is a place where kids get to build their sense of self, where they're building their self-esteem, where they're figuring out what they love and what lights them up, whether it's technology, media. We're going to have a media green screen so kids can play with that.
That'd be cool.
In Fort Kids. And so it's all about really kiddos exploring who they are with an adult too.
Yes. What else have you done? You've done yoga. You just said you were writing.
Well, they're probably like, this girl is crazy.
No. It's impressive. You've been doing a lot of things, it sounds like. So I'm like, what else have you done, picked up along the way?
So it just started out, I went to school in Colorado, journalism, and then every summer I interned for different magazines, and then eventually made my way to Texas, where one of my old editors who I'd interned for, she wanted me to come help her with a magazine there. So I moved there, and it was closer to home, and so Texas was nice. But I started doing yoga, and then my family went through a lot of stuff, and it kind of changed. Maybe it didn't change my path, but it made the path clear for me on kind of what I wanted to do. And that's whenever I, opened up the yoga studio, and then I became a counselor, and then counseling and motherhood really came together and led me to Fort Kids.
Okay.
Because I feel like Fort Kids, it's not only a place for kids, but it's a place for the adults to come and connect as well.
Yes.
Whether they're connecting with their kids or they're getting to connect with other adults, that connection is really nice.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's so important. Even when we were in, we just moved from Texas, and we were in Carrollton, Fort Worth area.
Yeah.
And I think it's super healthy to have those different areas like that, which that area has a ton of different options. And they're even getting, have you heard the Disney is coming there to Frisco, Texas.
I saw that.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a children's theme park, I want to say, or something
really
like
cool.
that. Yes.
Yeah.
And so having all of that, and the libraries are amazing, is really motivational for moms who stay at home or who don't, or dads who want to connect with other dads.
Absolutely.
And so can you dive into the importance of that a little bit more for parents? I know it was a little bit more dramatic for you coming out of COVID, having nothing. There was more of a need, but just now, day to day, how important do you think that connection is for parents to parent relationships?
I think that the mental health of parents is vital to a child's mental health. And so, part of that mental health, like we talked about in the very beginning, is that connection, and parents need each other. Parents need each other because we all go through things, and it's like, oh my goodness, are you going through this too? Like how, and just having each other as sounding boards, but also just as a place of support to say, like, you're not alone. And I think too, when you go through the process of having a child, you don't come out the same. You don't come out of that birth experience the same. Like, you're not the same person anymore. Your priorities shift. You shift internally. I think that there's even a science in the way that a woman's brain changes once she has children. And just to have the support, that saying, it takes a village.
Yes.
It truly does. And so it's not just, parents having other, parents, but it's a lot of people nowadays too rely on grandparents. And it's like, okay, well, if the grandparents are with the kids while maybe you're working, well, what can they take the kids to go and do, and connect with them as well, and because it's hard just whenever you're at home to figure out, like, what am I going to do all day? What are we going to do all day? And sometimes it's nice just to get out of the house. So I think too, my very good friend and neighbor, Emily Treadaway, she does something called The Call, and she trains foster families. And here in Fort Smith, in Sebastian County, we have the second largest population of kids in foster care. And Emily and I talk about how Fort Kids is also a great space for, reunification, visitation for those parents to be able to go and have that time and have a place because Fort Kids will hopefully have these hands-on experiences that leads, like I said, to just more connection.
Yes. So,
and memories.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful picture to think about, a mom and maybe a foster kid coming there, and they're able to actually do something tangible.
Yeah.
Not saying that going to a coffee shop is bad, but, you go to a coffee shop with a kid and, you're trying to
wrangle the kid.
them. Yeah, you're trying to keep them from, hey, don't touch this, but being able to go someplace and actually interact.
Yes.
And I think that, in that type of situation, it maybe even alleviates some tension that may be there.
100%.
And it makes a way better, I can only imagine a way better situation. Maybe they leave feeling a lot better about what happened and the interaction that they had with. Yes, that's an amazing idea.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And, the memories that are attached to the experiences that both the kids and adults might have in Fort Kids, that carries with them, forever. I say that, childhood, it's not something that we outgrow. It carries with us. Those memories from childhood, they help form who we are as adults.
Yes.
And it's not something that we outgrow. And so giving both kids and adults that place where they can maybe relax a little bit and just play together.
Yes. Yes. I think when you look at people's life who, older people, maybe just more successful, like they've had some level of success, I think you see in all of these people's life that they have this childlike mentality to them, this childlike playfulness, energy. And I think, thinking about that, if they didn't have a good experience as a child, they really don't want to come back to a situation like that in life, because I think that we're all striving for success so that we can become that inner child again that doesn't stress about the day-to-day things, who's just enjoying life, who's looking for those interactions with mom, dad, friend, brother, sister. And I think that we have to, there's a level for everybody that's different, a bar of what that looks like for us. But if you don't have anything to reflect on that's positive,
that's right,
then what are you aiming for? You know, you're just kind of endlessly working. And
a lot of the kids that I see, and this is even, I mean, this is just what research tells us about trauma, but it's anything that kind of overwhelms a child's ability to cope with their environment. And a lot of times what happens is kids are taking on adult responsibilities really young, and they don't necessarily get to be a kid. Like if you're thinking about these kiddos that we were just talking about, like in foster care, like oftentimes, like they don't feel like they're being taken care of. They don't know where they're going to sleep. They don't necessarily know who they're going to be with. An adult responsibility kind of comes forward. And so exactly what you're saying, I think with childhood, we want it to be a place of possibility and opportunity and hope. We want it to breed hope, instead of feeling like there's no possibility, there's no opportunity for me.
Yes. I mean, even taking a different mindset with that idea of, you know, kids are growing up way quicker than they have to nowadays, especially with foster care. If you step outside of that, I think all kids are. Okay. I mean, and I think every year
that's right,
that passes, kids are having to grow up way quicker than they had to before. And I honestly think it's because of this thing right here.
Yeah.
You know, they have something to compare themselves to, and they're looking at what success is, and they're trying to achieve that. You know, you hear things like, I can't wait until I turn 12. I can't wait until I'll turn 18. I can't wait until I get out the house.
Yeah.
And us adults are like, I wish I was back there. Yeah. I wish I was 12 again and didn't have responsibilities that I have to worry about. I wish I was able to live life a little bit more free like you have now. Yeah. And I think it's an unhealthy culture nowadays to make a kid, or I want to say allow a kid to grow up that quick, because even good kids who have good backgrounds, good families, good mom and dads who are raising them the best that they can, they're still growing up way quicker than they're supposed to. And I think that there now has to be a conscious decision to say, hey, I'm not going to give my kid a phone right now. I'm not going to give my kid an iPad yet. And we're actually going to go do something together. We're actually going to spend time together. I'm going to allow them to be a kid for as long as I possibly can. And I think that that is more freeing than any financial success that you could do. Really anything at all, being able to allow your kid to be a kid for as long as they can, because we all know as adults that once we flip that switch of life and we're not a kid anymore, things become a lot more difficult. Yeah. And the world becomes a lot more real in a way that, you know, maybe we weren't ready for. Because really, how can we as parents prepare our kids for this world? And so I think having that perspective on, okay, what can I do now that I'm not giving my kid a phone, I'm not giving my kid an iPad. Well, now you have a place to go to do that. Because I think in Arkansas too, a big problem, especially in rural communities, I wouldn't necessarily consider Fort Smith rural, but it's still a part of this, is boredom. There's nothing to do. When there's nothing to do, people find things to do, and those always aren't the best things. And so having different places to go to, having different things to do. Kids have a lot of energy. They need to get that energy out.
Do have a lot, yes.
And so having a place to go direct that energy is really pretty.
Yeah, it's all about engaging kiddos, engaging each other. And I think that that's the place where everyone thrives. It's from a place of engagement. And you know, kids' brains develop so quickly. I think it's like 85% of a child's brain is developed by the age of 3, and 90% of a child's brain is developed by the age of 5. Wow. And so also whenever we're talking about, you know, just development and kids learn through play, that is the language of a child until they're 7. and they process emotions through play. And there's just so much benefit. Like you're saying, there's so much benefit just on all sides and so many aspects, and it's much more than what meets the surface. Play is much deeper. I think it's that Mr. Rogers who said that, play is serious. It's serious learning,
Yes. And I think even kind of taking that statistic and putting that into like practicality, when you think about that, a kid's brain is developed how much when they're 5?
90%.
And how much when they're 3?
85%.
I think we sometimes can forget that kids as young as that are picking up our energy.
Oh, yes.
They're picking up what we're saying.
They are.
And they're beginning to develop that into their personality. And so, for instance, if you're stuck in home and you're just frustrated all the time with your kid, or you're frustrated with life, or you're frustrated with a situation that's not even, connected to them, those kids are picking up that energy and they're thinking that that's the way that they're supposed to live. And so, like I said before, having something to break that tension, even thinking about it from like a relationship standpoint, going on a date with your significant other is energizing. Why? Because you're going someplace, you're doing something that's out of the normal. And so it breathes life into that relationship.
That's right.
And so if you're not able to do something like that with your kid, whether it's a park or whether it's going to a museum, we love going to museums, or going to the library or different things like that. Like it's better. And I guess the more options that you have, even the better.
Yes. And, we have great parks here in Fort Smith, and we have wonderful libraries. I don't know, because your son is 9 months old.
He is turning 12, 16th of next month.
Oh, okay.
12 months. Yeah.
Okay.
And we go to libraries every week. So Tuesday, they go to the library.
That's great. So I know, our libraries have wonderful story times, and that's actually what saved me. Miss Tiffany at the Miller branch, she was fantastic. And, once COVID hit, then it all shut down. But parks too, I didn't really realize this having, whenever your kiddos are small, like they're not necessarily going to go and enjoy the park because if they can't walk yet, or if they're like at this stage where they're just putting everything in their mouths from like the
so no mulch part. Yeah, I know. That's like all off the table.
Mulch. But I was definitely thinking, we need a place where, because again, it's like, life doesn't start whenever they can start walking. Development starts, in the womb, and then as they're coming out, it's, it all plays into it. And I think that the more we can give, space where, an adult can go and just kind of, if she has a 6-month-old, I say she or he, has a 6-month-old and wants to, put them on a little play place. And we're going to have a space called Wobbly Park in Fort Kids.
Oh, wow.
And that's going to be for ages like 0 to 2. But, for the adult to put the baby down and have tummy time, maybe talk to other adults that are there as well. And, just having that. And also, I don't know if anyone else has felt this, but working around nap times and like feeding schedules and that kind of stuff, I had no idea what I was getting into whenever I became a mom. It's so much harder than playing baby dolls at home.
Yes.
I'll say that.
Yeah, I was talking on the first episode I did. There's a guy named Josh with Farmers Market Direct.
Okay.
And he was talking about how his wife went, she stayed at home when they had their first kid. And he made the statement that he thinks that moms are definitely entrepreneurs. Like all the planning, all the things that go, all the budgeting.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that you don't really think about. And, maybe necessarily you're not driving revenue by taking care of your kid at home,
right?
But you're definitely pouring into them and you're making their world and their future better. Yes. And that takes a lot of work.
It does.
It takes a lot of work, a lot of planning. And sometimes it's fun to just be watching a movie on a couch and Asher's already down for bed, my son. And Lauren's over there. She's budgeting, how how much formula do I need this week?
Yeah.
What am I going to cook for him? What's for breakfast? What's all of these different things?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of planning. It's a lot of work that, even she says, and I definitely know, I'm like, I didn't really think this was, I didn't know.
I didn't know. I don't know how many parents probably I had no idea. I think every parent, honestly, like no matter the situation, every parent is doing the best that they can. And the support, the village, like we got to be there. We got to create it. We have to create it because we all need it.
Yes.
All of us.
Yes.
All of us.
Okay. So let's say we're 10 years from now.
Yeah.
You're in 4 kids and you're busy and you just happen to walk through and you see an interaction between 2 parents and you stop and you just from a distance, you observe that interaction. What do you think is a scenario that you would like parents to have and walk away with when you walk away from seeing what you just saw and you're happy and you feel pleased and satisfied, like this is worth it?
Yeah. It makes me cry. I would just hope that, that it's not only nourishing for the kiddo that's playing, but it's nourishing for the adults that are talking. And maybe it's a mom that's been up all night and she's like, I was up 5 times last night. And the other mom looks at her and says, you know what? I was too. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. Or maybe it's, a grandmother that's there talking to a young mom and she says, you know what, honey, like, I know exactly what you're going through, you just never know what kind of connection is created. But I just truly know deep in my heart that like, this is, it's so much more than a place to play. It's that place for connection. And our mission is to build a world of connection and possibility through play. And, that I think that's my hope, whether it's, or even a dad who's hanging out with their kiddo on the weekend. Okay. So like you said, you take Asher here to your studio so you can let Lauren, your wife, sleep in some on the weekends. Maybe you could bring Asher to Fort Kids and, be hanging out while she's getting some much needed rest.
Yes.
And maybe you meet some other people, and you're all talking. And I think just the spirit of community is really the heartbeat, of Fort Kids and that connection.
That's so cool to think about. Even just that specific scenario, a dad starting a group on Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
Hey, this is wife rest day. We're all going to come together.
Yes.
We're going to help each other because we're dads and maybe, we're not used to day to day being the sole provider, for the kid. But we're all going to come together and do it and enjoy our time together. And our kids are going to enjoy their time with other kids. Yes. That's a really cool thing to think about on a Saturday. Or a Sunday afternoon. I don't know.
And we're hopeful to have like a little cafe with maybe some coffee and some, good snack opportunities. We're going to have like an outdoor space too.
How big are you thinking or imagining this space to be?
So it's 20,000 square feet with 10,000 square feet of exhibit space and then outdoor space as well.
Wow.
And so
that's huge.
We're hoping for, if you can imagine, so it's down on the riverfront. Thank you to the Westfall family for donating over 5 acres of land to us on the riverfront. It's the south of the Marshall's Museum. And we're hoping for big windows with like lots of natural light, being able to see the river while maybe you're playing with the water play, the river water play exhibit. But that's what we're hopeful for.
What year did you come back to Fort Smith?
So I came back in 2016, 2017.
Okay. So from what I've heard, because I'm not from here, but my wife is that Fort Smith has kind of been at a standstill for a long time. But hearing how the community has really rallied behind this project with you, with Fort Kids and donations and grants and just I'm sure there's even things that you didn't even mention. I'm sure tons of things.
Yeah.
I think that the culture's really changed to see, the importance of striving for more here, more than just the factories, more than just one or two coffee shops, which are, big company owned, but more local things. And so can you talk about that a little bit? Like the community rallying behind you, what has that been like? And do you see a difference in what I'm talking about? Because I guess you said you're from here as well. Yeah. And so can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think that Fort Smith has its own, its own vibe, its own community, its own place. And I mentioned this before whenever we talked on Saturday, but the great thing about Fort Smith, it's the people here. And I think that the more that we can come together, just like you inviting me to sit here with you and talk about all of this, but like the more that we can come together and create, a shared vision that we're all like, yes, like this is going to, create, a vision for the future that will affect generations to come and will also, give us potential for our kids to want to live here and have their families here and join the workforce here and continue kind of these legacies of these wonderful businesses that have been created here in Fort Smith. I mean, we have so much here. And I think that the more that we can create this potential for our own children, the better off our future is going to be. And I do feel like investing in our community so that you're not having to go up to Northwest Arkansas for entertainment. So you're not having to go to Tulsa's Children's Museum or, you're getting to stay here on the weekends and spend your money here and go to the wonderful restaurants here. I think truly like the more our community will thrive.
Yes.
And especially, I know that, the economy, it's like, okay, well, is this the right time? Because construction costs, fluctuate and go up and down. But at the same time, I mean, I think that there's no better time to invest in a community than now.
Yes. Yes. I think with a lot of things like this, like you're talking about with the economy and the way that it's going, there could be two perspectives depending on who you are. There's a business perspective that says, no, bad time. Construction costs are up, interest rates are skyrocketing on loans, all the different things. But then there's listening to your heart. There's a spiritual component. And I think that whenever you listen to that voice more, you get better results. And you basically you get to open up like Pandora's box to things that you didn't even know were there, because truly it doesn't matter what interest rates are. It doesn't matter what any of those things. None of those things matter if God tells you it's the right time, it's the right time.
Exactly. I feel that deep within my heart. Yes. And I do think that there's always the what if. Like I've been asked the question, well, what if you don't make your capital campaign goal? And I feel like that's for anyone. My dad had a business here for many, many years. And I feel like you can what if things to the point where you never try to do anything.
Yes.
And it's like, well, what if we don't try? I'm more worried about that than if we do try and fail, not make the mark.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think also too, when you're at peace with what you're doing and you're doing your hardest and you know that you put your best foot forward, there is this level of, well, it doesn't really matter what the outcome is because I know that I did everything that I possibly could. Yeah. And I know that I followed the voice that I heard and I know that voice was right. And I didn't really vary in altering the plans of what I heard in my heart to do. And so there is this piece that even if it does fail, it wasn't a fail. Yeah. It was a learning experience. And really, there's everything's a learning experience. But it's even more than that. I did what I was supposed to do, and I'm happy with that. Yeah. I'm happy that now, let's say, for instance, with you, like, let's say it does fail. But you have now built this foundation of what it could be. And so maybe 10 years from now, someone takes all that, takes the idea that they saw on Facebook, on the Facebook group, what's happening in Fort Smith, and they now take that same exact thing and they actually do it.
Yeah.
That's a win.
That is a win. And I think planting the seeds, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I will say that we haven't announced it, and I guess I'm going to go ahead and announce it here. The bakery district is kindly offering space to us. So we are going to have a few exhibits down there at, so it's going to be right next to Fort Smith Coffee.
Oh,
and we're going to do a few exhibits in there. So
in the middle spot between Maddox and, that's so
right
cool.
where the bathrooms are.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So we're going to have a few exhibits down there. I know I just ordered the pretend food truck this morning. So that's very exciting. And then we're going to have a little space for tiny tots, and we're going to have some other pretend play areas. And then we're also going to have like some STEM areas, like some open play areas as well. So one of the ideas is to have like scraps of cardboard and let kids like make different things with cardboard. And we're going to have like lots of little stuff like that. I don't know if you guys have seen the scarf blower where you put the scarf in the tube and the scarves fly up.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're going to have one of those in there too.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Okay. So hoping to kind of get started, even though we don't necessarily have our place built yet. It's a really big start, and we're so grateful to the Hannah family and the bakery district for letting us do that.
That's so awesome, and congratulations on that.
You.
And so that will be available, obviously, well before the building and people are able. So that's cool.
We're hopeful to get everything ordered and here and installed, and we're looking at maybe August.
Okay. Wow. That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay. So I kind of want to bullet round a couple of questions right now for someone who's interested in doing something like what you're doing in different parts of Arkansas. So one of the questions that I had is, with it being a nonprofit, how does it work for you? So for instance, you don't have to have another job, I'm guessing, just because this is like you're busy enough with this.
I've been a counselor and I still see a few clients, but this is becoming my main job. And we are about to look at hiring our first paid staff. But so far we've been able to do this with volunteers.
Okay.
And I think that's traditionally, just through the research that I've done, that's how a lot of museums start. A lot of children's museums start with like a group of very passionate volunteers who want to get this done in our community. And, we looked at doing a feasibility study here in Fort Smith for figuring out the size of Fort Kids. But what I learned through that process is that every community can have a children's museum. It might be smaller, it might be bigger. It just depends on the population and the scale of what the community can handle. But children's museums are feasible.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then two, we talked about this when I had you on briefly Saturday. But you do have a number, I think it's 7.4 million. That's your breaking ground number.
Yes.
And how far are you along right now in the overall goal? The overall goal is what again, 20?
So it's 16.3 million is our overall goal. We're inching towards 2. I'm not sure where we'll be once we have some outstanding verbal gift agreements, but we don't have them signed yet. So we haven't been able to announce them or add them to our capital campaign number. But we're hoping that we're going to get to 2 pretty quickly and then push on to 3. And then whenever we get to 3, we're going to apply for a grant for construction costs.
Okay. And just so you know, this episode will probably go out towards the end of July.
Okay.
And so hopefully by then.
Hopefully by then, yes, we will be well on our way. And also hopefully the bakery district space will be open.
Oh, yes. That'd be so cool. Was there anything else that you would like to share that's exciting about the space? Just really any news at all about what's happening with Fort Kids?
Well, I mean, we're always doing community events. We have Marie Holland and Stephanie Pizza that are our outreach directors, and they are always doing stuff within the community. And I think I said on the last podcast, our next one is June 26th at the Miller Branch Library, and we're doing a Portuguese pop-up language class. And then in July, we're doing... It's with The Call, who I mentioned, Emily Treadaway with The Call, so foster families, and we're doing just a little paint night at Arts on Main in Van Buren, and then all of that art is going to be displayed at Art on the Border, which is like a fun. It's really just a way for artists within the community to show their work and for people to come and enjoy their work. And anyway, so we're going to have the art displayed there. And then we've got some other pop-ups happening in August that we're excited about. But we try to do pop-ups like once a month for sure, but sometimes it ends up being like 2 or 3 times a month. So,
Wow.
so yeah. And all of our events pretty much are free.
Okay.
So if you check our Facebook page, which is Fort Kids Children's Museum, or our Instagram page, Fort Kids Children's Museum, or our website, which is www.fortkidschildrensmuseum.com, we try to put all the information on there. And you can also sign up for information on our website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
I can't thank you enough, Joe.
Yes.
I really appreciate you and just Arkansas Minds and the things that you're bringing light to and the people that you have on your podcast. I love it. I'm grateful for you and the work that you do here in our community.
Thank you so much. And I really am looking forward to this because obviously as a dad and all the things we talked about today.
Yeah.
And so I want to spearhead and help this come true however I can. And
Thank you.
I'll continue to share on social media and then push this one out.
Thank
And,
you.
you know, if there's enough updates in the future, maybe we do a part 2.
Yeah,
and
that'd be great.
fun.
That'd
Yeah.
be so fun.
Yes. Thank you again for coming on.
I can't thank you enough.
Yes.